Hey, Ben Lawless here. I would like to briefly talk to you about making progressions, which if you already know how to write a developmental rubric and you know how to do a pairwise comparison, then this is very easy. It's just putting a few things together. So I'm going to assume that you already know how to write a developmental rubric. Check out the other videos and documentation about that. Once you've written a rubric according to those guidelines, then you should have done a pairwise comparison. Remember, a pairwise comparison is just when you compare the relative difficulty of different criteria, right? So just as a refresher, say you've got 4 criteria there, you look at the criteria and you think, are they all the same difficulty? No, using keywords is a bit harder for the students I've found when marking it, so we'll move that up one. And you just go through a little process of comparing the criteria to each other, and using your fantastic teacher experience, you just determine the relative difficulty of the different criteria. So you end up with something like that. And what we're saying is that all of these skills are roughly the same difficulty. Yeah, all the red ones, all of the orange ones are roughly the same difficulty. All of the blue ones are roughly the same difficulty, and so on. So you'll see here we've really already got a few levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you can put more than one row in a level. So for example, if we were going to turn that, call this the progression, we could possibly go, yeah, that's level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and maybe because this one's only got one criteria in the top, we could bunch them together and call them level 5. There's no, look, a lot of this stuff is an art, not a science, so use your judgment as to where you think the cut points between the levels is most appropriate. Now, if you have done this pairwise comparison to your rubric, that essentially already is a progression. It's what's called a hypothesized progression. Why is it called a hypothesized progression? Because you are hypothesizing the relative difficulty of the different criteria, and that is usually based on teacher experience, so it's usually pretty good. There is a way to validate it with data, but that's another story which we can talk about in another video perhaps. But once you've already got a rubric like this, then you've pretty much done a progression. What I'm talking about here is, so that's a progression just for a single assessment task or assessment. If you want to turn it into a progression for a whole year level, you just need to add in all of the assessment tasks that you would have assessed for that year level, right? So in this example, I did a history writing task and a history source analysis task. I did a pairwise comparison on both of them. I've then combined the two together, and the individual pairwise comparisons might be tweaked a little bit once you put it with another one. So you might find that, like that whole bottom row, for example, that whole bottom row might be a bit harder than compared to this one or whatever. Yeah. So just make sure once you put all of your pairwise comparison rubrics together that you do another check to make sure that you think it's still the case that everything in that bottom row is roughly the same difficulty and everything in that second row is roughly the same difficulty, and so on. It doesn't need to be perfect, but in general you're making that claim. And that's pretty much it. Now this is where it gets interesting though. Adding level statements. So as mentioned, you could group the different levels and then come up with some statements describing roughly what students at that level can do. So here we go. We'll call it. It's tricky. You kind of like what to call the levels is obviously up to yourself, but I would try and use something unique and different so that people don't confuse it with grades or percentages or age-based expectations. I mean, maybe you want to do that kind of stuff, but for me, this progression tells students something that they can qualitatively do, so it's actually meaningful, whereas a lot of those labels, percentages, and letter grades don't mean that much, or people think they mean something, but they don't. So I'm trying to go neutral here. We've never used the word steps at my school, so I'm going to say step, right? So students, as they get better, move up those steps. And what I'm saying is the top, I'm saying that you'll notice that there's one step per row, but for the top one, it's both those top rows. Because I'm saying, well, firstly, there's only one criteria in that top row, so no point having I don't reckon there's much of a point having a step just for that. But also, you know, in terms of the subject, students achieving at that level are roughly in a similar place. So I'm not going to have a step 6, I'm just going to have 5 steps. Now, when we teach this to experienced teachers, we've found that one of the hardest skills in this entire process, all of this developmental assessment stuff, is writing level statements. I've attempted to have a go at writing some level statements here, so you have a look at them. You can judge whether or not they're very good or not. The point is with the level statements is that you're trying to describe in general what students at that level can do without just repeating all of the criteria at that level. Yeah, it's not easy. When I marked this at university, I found that students, teachers find this the most difficult out of pretty much most of the stuff we ask them to do in these kinds of subjects. So what I'm saying is, step 1, I mean, you could say, students at this level list facts, things about soldiers, write sentences that impair readability, list cause and recognize continuity, and list author and title. But that's a bit long-winded, right? This level statement is supposed to be kind of a summary. So my summary, as I've said, students at this level can list information from historical sources. Yeah, with the emphasis being on the word list there, right? So I haven't just repeated all the criteria. I've tried to come up with a statement that sort of summarizes what students at that level can do. And as I say, it's not easy to do so. So next one up, I've tried again to try and describe sort of the gist of what these students at step 2 do. So again, rather than just going, students at this level can describe how soldiers feel, use history keywords, describe causes, and list concrete source details, I've said students at this level can describe historical information, right? That's what I'm saying is like my overall statement of students at that level. Now, you might wonder why we've gone to all of this effort to make these fantastic rubrics with all of this great detail, and then what might seem like going backwards, which is where we write these summary statements. Like, isn't that taking some of the benefits of the developmental rubric out? Fantastic question. You're very wise for asking it. In fact, there's a couple of different ways that you can use developmental assessment to assess a student's work. You could do the in-depth look at the entire rubric, go over the student's work with a fine-tooth comb and assess it against every single criteria, every single skill. Or with the level statements, you can very quickly just look at a student's work and kind of give them a really quick. You could glance at a page of a student's writing, for example, and probably plot them into one of those 5 steps. So that allows you to do more informal and more frequent feedback. I think that if just like in business, if the feedback cycle between the learner and the teacher is quick and often, then they're going to make more progress. Feedback, if you buy into Hattie's stuff, feedback's one of the highest effect sizes, 0.88. Anyway, another benefit is that you can report to parents like that. So instead of giving them this meaningless A, B, C, D, E, or percentage, or extending, consolidating, is at level, below level, all of these things, they don't actually tell you anything meaningful about what a student can do. If you report to parents saying, if on all of their rubrics across the year they're getting stuff roughly in this area, your report comment could say, little Jane can list information from historical sources, right? And that way, the report that you give to parents is actually meaningful. It tells you what their child can do. And then very easily, you can get some really useful areas for improvement. So if I gave a student, step 1, what do they need to do to get better? Have a read about what the overall gist statement says for step 2. They might go, oh, right, okay, so I'm all about listing. Now I need to start describing. Okay, so my responses need to be more descriptive and have more details in it, whatever. Yep. Awesome. So heaps of benefits to this approach. So that's a single year progression, yeah? What gets really tricky is multi-year progressions, but we will get there eventually. But once you can get a single year progression, you've done a lot of the work already. There are lots of benefits to those single year progressions. Just to go back briefly, I print out one of those single year progressions, get students to glue it in the back of their exercise book, and they circle their own rubric criteria that they've been awarded, and they can see their own progress across the year, which is great. So for learners, better goal setting. Students can know, oh, okay, I'm at step 2. What do I need to do to get better? I'll just read the general statement for step 3. And then if I need even more guidance, I can read the individual criteria at step 3. For teachers, it's a lot easier to organise ability groups. So you might have a whole group of students that are at step 3. What would be a good learning experience for them to improve? Give them something to do with step 4. It can also help to make targeted interventions a bit broader. So rather than needing to write a targeted activity for every single criteria, you could potentially write targeted activities or targeted lessons that look at an entire level at once. If you are in the habit of organising ability groups, then that progression will help with that heaps. As mentioned in the video about pairwise comparisons, really amazing emergent property of this stuff, which we didn't realise beforehand, is that you can actually get a good idea about what a student's ability is likely to be in a skill before you've assessed it, right? So as long as all the skills are in the same domain, i.e. in this example, history specific skills, then if you know what a student's skill level is in one, it's likely that they're going to be at roughly a similar level in another skill, as long as you've done the pairwise comparison and compared the relative difficulty of those criteria correctly. Big benefits for the parents: they can see progress across the year. That's obviously a benefit for learners as well. And the reporting that the parent sees meaningful. There'll be statements saying what their child can do rather than how they compare to others or how it's been back translated into some meaningless letter or number. You can tell that I'm very biased against grades. I think they're quite misleading because I think that people think they mean more than they do. And for leaders, you might be able to see patterns between teachers. You might be seeing patterns across years of teaching. You can also track how effective certain pedagogies are. We introduced this new pedagogy. Have our students made a lot of progress up the steps in our year-based progression? Yes, they have. No, they haven't. That might tell you how effective that pedagogy was at your school. And that is single year progression. So just a summary: you have a rubric written according to developmental principles, or what everyone's calling a developmental rubric. You do a pairwise comparison of that, comparing the relative difficulty of the different criteria. That's a progression for one assessment task. You then add all the assessment tasks in that one domain onto one big grid, and that's your single year progression. And lots of good things happen because of that. Thank you very much. Have a good one.